Hi,
Perfect.
Eva. I'm Ariana. Nice to meet you.
That's me. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, no problem. I love your glasses.
Oh, thank you.
So, why did you want to focus on Brandy Melville? Where did this whole idea come from, and how did you become familiar with the brand?
So this started a few years ago. I love fashion. I always have. I thought I was buying sustainably for the last like 5, 7 years. Everything I bought said it was sustainable, and I was sort of doing some research trying to find out where this was made and what factory it was made in, and it was super opaque. And I'm like, is this really sustainable? And then I discovered greenwashing and how the industry is completely unregulated. There's no even definition for sustainability that's agreed on in the fashion industry. You can basically have a line of hundreds of clothing and have one organic t-shirt and you can call yourself sustainable. And I'm like, okay, if I can't work this out, how is the average consumer navigating this? And that's where I started. And then I had a meeting with some producers I really admired and wanted to work with, Jonathan and Simon Chin from Lightbox. They'd made Man on the Wire and Searching for Sugar Man and Tina. They're like amazing filmmakers. And I mentioned that I'd love to do something on fast fashion, but I didn't have a story. And they came back to me pretty quickly with Brandy Melville. And they were amazing. They were like, we're not talking to anyone else. We want you to do this. What do you think? And I was like, yeah, I've never heard of Brandy Melville. I grew up in Australia. I live in America for a long time. I'm not a teenager. I don't have a teenage daughter. So I did a deep dive and I'm like, wow, this is horrifying and frightening. And then I talked to all my friends that had teenage daughters and they were like, oh, we spend our lives in Brandy Melville. I saw their closets full of Brandy Melville. I was like, this is interesting. And as the more I kind of looked into it and started to talk to people, I realized I didn't want it just to be an expose on one brand. I wanted at the end of the film the audience to have an idea of the context and the impact, both in terms of exploitation of workers globally and also the environmental impact that fashion is having on the planet. And I thought if I could merge those two stories into one, it could be really a lot more powerful. And to my to my to my happiness, to my, I was really pleased that the producers and also HBO agreed that it would be a really good idea to open out the film. And that's kind of how it was born.
Yeah. So you started with kind of the concern about fast fashion, and then Brandy Melville came in. When you were doing the research, and even when I was watching the film, it just got darker and darker, and I feel like so many unexpected things came up. How was that like for you as a documentarian, and what was the most surprising thing that you kind of discovered?
I mean, there were so many things along the way. One of the first things that shocked me, and still, I talk about this a lot, I thought it would be really easy to find people to talk because Brandy's really popular. There's lots of ex-employees. Kate Taylor, who's in the film, had done this great expose in Business Insider that sort of started it all. As I reached out to people, I mean, I spoke to hundreds of ex-employees at Brandy, and most of them said they do want to be in the film. A lot of them would share their stories. Some of them wouldn't engage at all. And I totally understand that. It's very scary being a whistleblower. They're young women. They're scared of the company and retribution. They're scared of Stefan Marzan. And also, they're starting their careers and they don't want a black mark next to their name for future employers to think of them as a troublemaker. And so, the women who agreed to be in the film, most of them did so immediately and they weren't scared.
Mhm.
And I really emphasize they're still young. They were really young when they worked there and they're still in their late teens and early 20s now. They are the heroes of this story. They are brave, they are fearless, they are courageous. I think they're amazing. So that was one surprise. Um, I mean, some of the details of the story, like, when I found out that he installed those buzzers next to the cash registers in New York, I mean, it's like there's levels of creepiness, and this was definitely next level. I mean, how much control do you really want to have as a man in your 40s over teenage girls? It's quite disturbing and sick. I mean, the man has a teenage daughter. It boggles the mind. Um, there are so many things. And I think one of the things that surprised me too was, I believed in the Made in Italy label. I believed it meant quality and no exploitation and no sweatshops. And so I mean, I knew there were sweatshops in LA where I live, but I didn't know they were in the UK. I didn't know they were throughout Europe. I didn't know they were in Italy. I mean, they're basically, we really, I mean, we're racist in our assumption of, developing countries and the kinds of people that work in sweatshops, maybe in Asia and India and, other developing countries, but they're right in our backyards as well. And I thought that was really surprising. And then I think the other thing that shocked me the most, and even whenever I think about it, I get chills, was standing on the beach in Accra in Ghana and seeing where our clothing ends up was something I will never forget. And I hope that the images we captured that are in the film will be seared on people's minds every time they're about to push a button on social media to buy something they don't need.
Yeah. What was interesting and what I was even thinking about when watching um the film is that I feel like fast fashion, and I think it's a dual thing about level of responsibility. It's often pushed on the consumer, as in you're buying too much. You want things so quickly, so this is why they're doing it. And it's always just quote unquote cheap stuff. But high end stores, if you look at the label, it's the exact same practices. It's the decrease in the use of cotton in the industry is insane, and the increase in polyester. I feel like a lot of the blame is placed on the consumer a lot, when sometimes it's not also focused on just the overproduction. And a lot of the stuff going to Ghana, even going into thrift stores and stuff, is brand new that no one ended up buying. So they had to keep pushing it. Um,
Here's a statistic for you. The main problem, I've written this down so I don't get, because I'm terrible with numbers. The main problem is overproduction. We make 100 billion garments per year globally, 100 billion garments. Most of those don't last a year and end up in landfill. And a lot of them are made of polyester, which takes 200 years to disintegrate. So you've totally nailed it. But what's interesting to me is I actually think the power is with the consumer. We're not going to be, you're not going to show a movie like this to the owner of a company and they're going to say, you know what I'm doing is wrong. I'm going to shut down and stop making, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. What will stop it is if the consumer, who is most often a young woman, says, I'm not going to buy this anymore.
yeah.
I don't think young women realize how much power they have. If they stop defending these, I mean, I get it. There's brand loyalty. They love their baby tees. I get it, but they're not special. You can get them anywhere else. Just buy them secondhand or just go somewhere else that's better. But also, why do you want to wear a t-shirt that's called a baby tee and infantilize yourself? Even the concept of that, everything's about being smaller, taking up less space, being less of a person. But
Yeah.
it's like, just stand up. You can still be hot and sexy and cool, but stand up and claim your power and stop supporting these mostly male-owned businesses whose entire business model is based on exploiting young women. If they all stood up, it would be over. They
Yeah. I feel like another shocking thing about Brandy Melville, and kind of confusing how this business model is something they really stand by, is this one size fits most, when it doesn't kind of really fit anyone. Why do you think that model is kind of semi successful for women, but I don't think would ever pass with a male audience at all?
It's interesting because you see, like, and they're in the film, you see a lot of, like, young actresses or models who are super, super successful, super wealthy, but they're still posting that they're wearing like a $20 Brandy thing. And they say, Brandy's been a staple my whole life. I still wear their stuff. There's a little bit of a badge of honor in being skinny enough in your 20s to fit into Brandy. There's a lot in there. There's a lot about body image. There's a lot about, there's a lot there. And at the end of the day, a lot of girls come out on social media and say, don't skinny shame us. We're thin girls. We like being thin. We work out, or we're naturally thin. No one's shaming them. They're just saying, why be exclusionary? Why not include everyone? Why can't a size 10 wear this t-shirt as well as a size 0? Like, it just should be, we are women. We should all have access to the same thing. But there's this sort of built-in exclusivity that they really fostered to make it was like the cool girl, a little bit of a mean girl vibe as well. And young women are easy to manipulate potentially, particularly when it comes to things they're not secure about as they're growing up, which is their looks and their bodies. And if you get the wrong person to be manipulating that, who is potentially a creepy white man in his 40s, who's not cool, has no taste, would not be a Randy customer, which is the irony. This is what happens. But it's up to the target audience. It's up to the consumers to say no.
Yeah, it's odd to me. Well, I feel like I noticed while watching the film, while being in Brandy Melville a few times, and even on social media, it feels like the toxicity is their marketing ploy. Like that people want to go into Brandy Melville, even though it's known to have terrible customer service. So maybe someone will like them and then ask them to work there in this minimum wage job that then you get treated very poorly, or the idea of the whole Brandy Melville diet. What do you think there could be a point where toxicity isn't the marketing ploy for this brand, or does it really kind of have to just be shut down completely?
I mean, you would think it would have to be shut down completely, but a lot of brands have pivoted. You know, if it meant that they wouldn't be in existence, maybe they'd pivot. Or maybe Stefan Marzan is that one-minded that he would just say, you know what, I've made enough money. I don't want to deal with people that I don't think are attractive. But I just find it so odd that a man in his 40s who's clearly got no style, you know, is not. I mean, you've seen the three existing photos of him. He's so concerned what 14, 15, 16-year-old girls look like. Like, I think it's deeper than that. It feels like a sickness to me. That's not normal adult male behavior. That's predatory and sick, and
Yes.
possibly a lot more. And I think this film is an alarm, and it should really, I don't know, I think they should be investigated on a lot of levels. I mean, they've come out very blatantly and said, we're libertarian, we don't like taxes. I'd say, why don't we find out?
Yes, I'm sure there's way more to the story. But thank you for opening this door for the beginning of the story. It was so great to finally talk to you, and I can't wait to talk to you about future projects.
It was great meeting with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.